We're back! It is another episode of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit, episode 183. It is Monday, March the 6th, 2023, 6:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name's Dave McRae, coming to you live from the VoiceMann Studios in Toronto, Canada. He's Tony Michael in Atlanta, Georgia. And tonight we are talking two fan favorites from two horror franchises. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live! We are live! A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors versus Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. Two fan favorites. How do they compare? How do they stack up? How were they important to their respective franchises? We're going to talk about it tonight on episode 183. Tony, my man, how you doing? How's Atlanta, Georgia doing?
Say that again, because I couldn't hear you with the music.
Sorry. How you doing? How's Atlanta, Georgia doing?
Freaking awesome, beautiful springtime weather. It's sunny out. Gonna do some yard work tomorrow. Got a new roof put on over the weekend.
As Skeletor would say, yo, boob.
Yeah. So, beginning some home renovations and yeah. So,
nice.
You know.
It's 35 degrees Fahrenheit here in Toronto. And but that's the reality. We had a big snowstorm. Not just us. I mean, the northern states also did as well. At least the ones that border Ontario. And yeah, we had a big storm. 30 centimeters of snow dropped, which is about 11 inches of snow. Just all in like a few hours. It was crazy. I was out there shoveling and it was like getting that real workout in, working those trapezoids and the fucking back muscle. I was like Goldberg when I was done. I was like, Rah! Rah! That's how I felt. I felt like Goldberg from 1997. I mean, it's literally what I felt. I was out there with my shirt off going, Rah! No, but it was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy. Yeah, so this should be a good episode. This is going to be fun to talk about. Yes. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. Yes. These are two horror movies in their respective franchises that are very important to them because they're both coming off of films that fans especially were like, do you know what I mean? So I don't know about you, what your memory is in the 80s. I just remember very vividly, distinctively, these two specifically. Just, seeing the posters of Jason Lives everywhere, on teenagers' walls and whatnot. Same thing with Dream Warriors, obviously. And both films have killer tracks.
I was just about to say very, because 80s, obviously with the hairband metal era, you had Dawkins' Dream Warriors, and you had Alice Cooper's Man Behind the Mask. Although I did not hear Man Behind the Mask played that much on radio, but certainly Dream Warriors, yes, you did hear that a little bit, because Dawkins was really, they were part of that, the glam bands and all that stuff that were, I don't know if the Dawkins was glam or not, but they were in that shuffle. So I definitely remember that. And both movies were very heavily influenced by MTV in the mid 80s. When you watch both these films, you get the vibes, when you see the kids, the way the kids are dressed and the tonality of the movies, the musics that are being played in and throughout both respective films. Cause I just watched both of them here, very recently, just to have them fresh in my mind. And that was one of the things I noted, that, there is that mid 80s heavy presence along with MTV and the rock style that was in at that time. It was a great time. It was a fun time, but I just remember as a kid in the 80s, man, that these two films, and again, and I'm sure you would agree with this, people were looking at movies in the 80s through totally different lenses than they are today. They were not what we're doing, the deep dives and nobody was doing that shit. It was just hey, another Friday the 13th film, man. Let's go check it out. You
Yeah,
know, I mean, that was pretty much it.
for sure. There was no platform for people to do that. It was just, you know, you
And
did
I
it
don't
in-
even think people were thinking like that back
No,
then
I mean,
either,
look,
you
I
know?
remember when, and I've told this before, but in and around this time, in and around like 86, 87, I remember going to school and there was a kid in my class. Shout out to this guy. If he's, you know, if he ever sees this, I haven't seen or spoken to him probably in about 35 years because I moved away to another town in 1988. So I haven't seen or spoken to this guy since like 1988, but his name was Jamie Hunt. And he was into horror. He was into Freddy and Jason, all that kind of stuff. And I remember we got into an argument in school. And I know I was right because, well, the proof is out there, obviously. But for what it's funny what kids do, right? He was convinced that Jason's last name was Vanterhees. And I was like, no, it's Voorhees. And he's like, no, my brother says it's Vanterhees. And I'm like, well, your brother is wrong. My brother says it's Vanterhees. I'm like, it's Voorhees. Now, here's the thing.
That's the English-British tea time version of Jason. Hello, my name is Jason Vantertees.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Here's what's so funny about it, right? This is, you know, this was at a time, it might seem funny to maybe younger people today who've grown up in the digital era because it's so easy to confirm this kind of stuff. And now it's so in the pop culture, right? We've had like 40 years of these movies. But at that time, I mean, you know, it was at a time when there was, you know, you couldn't just look it up on your phone. There was no internet. There, you know, nobody had computers, right? In order to be able to confirm something like that, you'd have to go home, put in the VHS, put like, you know what I mean? And it's literally what you'd have to do. So this was an argument that...
And nobody was shitting on these movies either. You know what I mean? No one cared to that level.
Not like it is now. No. Not like it is now. But it was fascinating to have that, you know, quote unquote argument with this kid because, yeah, there was no way of really confirming it other than
Vantertees.
No, Vanterhees. Vanterhees, yes. So you know, you had to go home and kind of, but no, his brother was wrong. So your brother was wrong. Jamie Hunt. He probably doesn't even remember that. I mean, again, this is like 1988. But no, look, I remember those movies very well. I was a big fan of the first Elm Street and a big fan of the second one. I like the third one well enough. I remember it, of course. I remember Jason Lives, absolutely. But I wasn't as big a fan of those two movies. I don't hate the movies or anything, but I wasn't as big a fan of those two movies as, say, a lot of people are. I would be in the minority when saying that Dream Warriors is either A, my favorite, which it isn't, or is my number two, which it isn't. You
know what, though?
It's my number three.
I think the only reason why these two films became fan favorites, okay, is because, again, what I said earlier here, when you watch the identity of both of these films are very heavily driven by MTV and the MTV era.
Even Elm Street 4, even more so.
Sure. And I think that's why kids in the 80s, teenagers and like even young kids like ourselves, because we were young kids, we weren't teenagers, but even young kids, we were heavily the majority of people weren't thinking like, oh, the original, only watch the original. Because these movies have, you know, especially when you get into Nightmare 3, it begins that Freddy's comic, you know, one-liners. I mean, he was doing it, but you had some stuff in the original. You had certainly a couple of lines in the sequel, but they really started ramping it up in the third film.
Yeah.
And I think because the identity of both these films had that aesthetic look to it, I think that's where it resonated with a lot of fans and why probably when it came to VHS rentals and buying, people were leaning more towards those because, you know, when you look at the teenage kids in both films, respectfully, but definitely in Nightmare, you know, when they get into the dream sequence and Taryn, she's got the rocker girl look with the knives and the whole set that they built had a very 80s theme, neon lights and stuff like that. You know, so they really, they were playing off the time. I don't know as they age, are they still fan favorites like they were back then? I think the only reason why they were such heavily fan favorites during that time was because of how the films identified themselves, which is, very much the presence of the 80s.
I think that's a very good point. Absolutely. I think that's a very good point. I think they are still considered fan favorites today amongst a lot of fans because of that nostalgia, right? And to your point, to piggyback off of what you said, which I think is actually very true, also too, especially when you're kids, right? Like, as you said, we weren't teenagers, we were kids. And, when we got into, I can't speak for you, but for me, when I got into horror, it was probably around 83, 84, 85, somewhere in there. I was like 4, 5, 6 years old.
85 or 86 when I saw Elm Street. That was the first time I watched a horror film.
Right. Okay. So but at that time, like, there's a big difference between your cognitive awareness at 4 and 5 and at 7 and 8. Do you know what I mean? You are a lot more mature and older at 8 than you are at 4. Like, there's a big difference between a 4-year-old kid and an 8-year-old kid. Do you know what I mean? Just like there's a big difference between like a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old, right? Even though that's only 4 years apart. And so I think too, by the time we got to 8 years old, which would have been in 1987, right? Which is when Elm Street 3 came out. 7 years old in 86 when Jason Lives came out. We were already, I say this with a grain of salt, of course, but we were already more mature than our 4-year-old kid self because we're like 7 and 8 now. That's a big gap. When you look at an 8-year-old child and you look at a 4-year-old kid, they look a lot different and they behave a lot differently too. And so I think that we were starting to sort of be more aware of horror. Even though we were at 4 and 5, we were starting to understand it a bit more. We were already into it a bit more. We had those, 4 years of, horror and Freddy and that kind of stuff. And then, so I think by the time we do get to that 87, 88, 89, late 80s, we are older, right? We're 8 and 9 and 10 years old. And so it becomes, we remember it more, basically, is that we have a stronger memory of that. Because obviously you are more likely to remember things from, the time that you're 8 and 9 than you at 4 and 5. And so I think that helps too. And, but it's fascinating because these are two movies. You had Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning, which obviously has grown on a lot of people since then. But at that time, it was like, what the hell is this? There's no Jason. What is going on? Holy crap.
If social media did exist back then, yes, then the 5 for Friday was not well. Even 5 grew on me as I got older. Because like you just said, looking at it as a 7-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid, 9-year-old, 10, whatever, it doesn't have Jason. Why the fuck do I care? But as you age and you mature with your, watching a movie, you start to go, I see what they did there.
Right.
I get it now. And I appreciate it. Right.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, it didn't do well. And in terms of, family, like, what the hell is this? Oh, it's the one without Jason, blah, 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 blah. So of course they had to, do a 180, do sort of what, Halloween did in 1988. And they had to bring back Jason Voorhees. So that's kind of, it's the return of Jason. And then you look at Elm Street. Well, Freddy didn't go away, but Elm Street 2 was even though I love it, and I think it's dark and
it's growing on me. I agree with your feelings on this movie. Yeah. It
is definitely the darkest, scariest Freddy out of the entire franchise, I think. The way he looks and how wet his makeup is and just, it's just creepy shit. And there's and the music, there's eerie shit in there. I think it's underrated. But of course they play loose and fast with the rules of that they established in the first movie, and some things when you really break it down don't really make a lot of sense, and what is going on here, and it's a weird feeling because of the homosexual undertones and what is all this. And so even though it was a box office success, which of course it would have been because the first one was so successful, it made sense that the sequel was going to draw in a lot of asses, but critically and with the fans it was like, like, so they had to go back to the roots.
Could I piggyback off something here really quick? What you said,
sure,
so
absolutely.
that I don't forget.
Yeah, bang on.
It's the undertone of part 2 and the sexual undertone to part 2. I never thought that until it was made aware to me through talking with you, not talking through with you. Through current times of social media.
Yes.
And growing up in the 80s, growing up in the 90s, I never saw that. I never looked at that film with that type of undertone. It wasn't until because of the culture we're now in, which is a very, everything is very much leaning towards that, in almost every movie and TV shows and whatnot. I never saw that type of section. I never looked at the film with a gay, in all intents purpose, undertone. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, that is. I never crossed my, never thought it, never crossed my mind. Didn't until people started to, like we said at the beginning here, the way YouTube started to become a thing and people diving deep and getting into more,
it becomes more obvious.
Right.
And why would you as a kid?
Are like, or not even as a kid, even as a teenager, I still didn't, because we were teenagers, I still never looked at it like that. I never looked at it through that lens. But I mean, yes, I can see the argument that people are making, but the only reason why people think of it now is because content creators brought the focus to that,
and the writer has since come out and said yes, even though even though he denied it for years, but because I think it's more acceptable to
that's it.
Admit it now.
It's not the 80s, right?
That's right. That's right. But even with that though, I mean, it's even looking at that movie through that lens, it's still creepy and eerie and it works. It's essentially about a kid who, you can look at it metaphorically. It's about a kid who's struggling with his sexuality, doesn't know how to, and Freddy, of course, knows about his sexuality. He knows all his dark, deepest secrets, and he's prying on that, and he's, exposing that vulnerability. And from that angle, through that lens, it absolutely works, and it's terrifying. That being said, that's part 2. But part 3, of course, wanted to get back to, basics, back to more of a traditional sort of thing with a bit of a twist in terms of adding some lighter themes in there with being able to lucid dream and actually have the awareness in a dream that you are dreaming. I've actually had that happen to me a couple of times in my life, and it's pretty cool when it doesn't happen often, but when it has happened, there have been times where I have actually been able to tell myself, oh my God, I'm dreaming. I need to get out of this situation right now. I'm just going to fly because it's my dream and I can. And away I go. And it's really fucking cool. It's really fucking cool. But yeah, of course, Elm Street 3, that's the beginning of the more of the quippy sort of one-liners. It's that balance. He isn't quite full MTV yet, but he's definitely applied to be a VJ. He's definitely got some interviews.
Do you know what was introduced for the first time in Elm Street 3? It never dawned on me, but
the word bitch.
Well, no, but the abandoned, run-down look of the house. The iconic house. Elm Street house. Yes. Because in the first 2 films they never showed you it abandoned.
That's right.
It was lived in. So this was the first time that you saw the iconic Elm Street house in that abandoned, boards up on the windows and stuff like that. So that was the very first time we see it in this movie.
Yes.
And I never dawned on me before because you were so accustomed to just, that's the Elm Street house,
that's
right?
That's it.
It's never shown like that in the first 2 films.
For sure. So both movies, of course, had something to prove, essentially, right? You have Jason Lives, who needed to get things back on track with Jason. So they had something to prove, and they succeeded. And then, of course, you had A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, not needing to necessarily get back with Freddy, but they needed to get back with a more familiar Freddy that still played by the rules, and maybe that was something not quite as dark and dreary as Part 2, even though I fucking love dark and dreary part. I mean, it's a Nightmare on Elm Street. It's not, a fluffy dream on Elm Street. But anyway, that being said, Elm Street 3 is sort of that kind of hybrid. I mean, that's where we get the introduction of, it's your big break on TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch. Blah, whatever he says there, right? Hey, Jennifer, it's your... hey, Jennifer,
Yeah,
this
you're
is
right.
it. This is your big break in TV or something like that, right? And he picks her up and, puts her in the television. So, I mean, there's a lot of quippy lines in there, but there's a lot of surrealism in there as well. A lot of cool set pieces, the big, gigantic snake head, all practical and stuff. I mean,
which
a lot
I
of
still
cool stuff.
stand to this day. We said this before, too, when we talked about Dream Warriors a while back. There is on Dave's channel where we specifically just talked about Dream Warriors only.
Yeah.
I've always was disappointed in that being the first time Freddie and Nancy see each other again. Freddie should have been Freddie himself. And he could still say the line, you. That's fine. The line is fine.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it have been more cooler with him in the fedora, the whole 9 yards, and he looks at her with the knives and she's like, you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Something like that.
For sure.
The snake thing was just so like, really? Like,
yeah, I know what you mean.
It's Nancy and Freddie. Like, this is how we're going to introduce them to each other for the first time. And I always fucking hated that with part
I know
3.
what you mean. Yeah, like, I've watched it recently and I don't dislike it. But it's not one of my favorites. I think it's just, it's just a personal thing with me. I just love dark, scary Freddy. I love the makeup in part 2. I love, I think the makeup in part 2 is the best Freddy makeup ever. I think he's the best portrayal of Freddy ever. And so when I watch part 3, I'm like, this is good. Like, it's not, again, when I say it's the best, I don't mean that it's, a huge gap in between 2 and 3, but there's a difference for me. And I think 3 tends to be that people, it's fun, dream boy, yes, and it's fun, the lucid dreaming and I am the wizard master, and it's like, okay,
Well, yeah, and I noticed that with all the dreams in part 3, it's very amped up. You know what I mean? And I understand, again, go big in the 80s, even the dream sequence with Patricia Arquette's character with the snake. That's a cool sequence in itself. I love the dream and I think it's very creative to change Freddy's form. But as I said, to introduce Freddie and Nancy to see each other for the first time, that should have been done. That should have been handled a lot different. Give it something with a lot of weight to it. But yeah, then you had, was it Taryn? I think was her name, the punk rock girl. Her dream looked like straight out of a metal video. And then, well, I will say one of the more iconic shots in that film is Freddie in with the wizard guy, and he's in the tunnel, and he's silhouetted. And you see the glove. That is a great shot of him. Yeah.
You look tired.
Yeah. But it definitely, what I like about, what I'm beginning to appreciate about 2 more, and what I love about the original is the very simplicity and realism of the dream sequences. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't, actually, because I know we're going to talk about it, comparing Jason Lives versus Freddy, like what were our favorite kills. I actually had a hard time liking the kills in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 because it was just so overdone, whereas in think about it. Think about the first, first on-screen kill in Nightmare on Elm Street is Tina. You don't even see Freddy. You don't see him in the shot. I mean, you see him up to the point when he's about to kill her, but when you're back in the bedroom, you don't see him. It's just Tina screaming, being pulled up the ceiling and shit. And that's fucking scary. That's legit scary. Then you get to Elm Street 3 and everything's just one big giant set. You know what I mean? There's no sense of, every time I'm like when I watch this film, and I agree with what you were saying. That's what I meant to say. I agree with what you're saying. It's not aging well with me. Like, the more I'm watching it, it just like these over big productive and I get it was the 80s, so I know why they did it.
I think. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say that I think the kills now, they begin to look campy. You know what I mean? They're just not.
I mean, it's dated.
Very dated, and not like, whereas like Tina's to this day, Tina's death in the original Elm Street.
Tina's death. I mean, it is, and I mean, there's a datedness to the movie, of course, but it still holds up well because of the intensity of it, and because of that sort of, because you don't see the killer.
And before anyone says, well, Nightmare on Elm Street also had sets. Tina's bedroom was. I know. It's just the way Wes shot it. He made it feel like you were really in someone's bedroom. Watching this shit go down, whereas in Elm Street 3, I'm looking at a set. It's a movie set. I don't feel like it's real.
Right. I understand what you're saying. I think when I think of Elm Street 3, a word that comes to mind, and a word that I've heard Elm Street 3 fans say, and there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with this. This is just, different strokes for different folks, right? But when I hear this word, and I think of this word too, because it is. And this isn't a slight against, and it was intentionally designed this way, of course. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't have some creepy, scary moments, for sure. But when I think of Elm Street 3, and when a lot of fans think of Elm Street 3, the one word that comes to mind is fun. And I sit back and I think Elm Street should never be fun.
No.
Okay? I should never go, that was fun. No, this isn't a fucking horror comedy. This is like, but that's me. Like, I want Elm Street. I want Freddy 1. I want Freddy 2. So, again, for Elm Street 3 fans out there are probably rolling your eyes. I get it. I totally get it. I don't dislike the movie. As I've said many times, if you were to ask me, Dave, how do you like the films? What would you, rank them? I tend to like them in order of their release. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, I think they get worse as they go on. I think, I think 1 is the best, right? I think 2 is totally, it's grown on me over the years. I was going to say something else, but it has. And then, of course, you have 3, which I think is better than 4, and 4, which is better than 5, and 5, which is not very good, but light years ahead of 6. You know what I mean? So I tend to like them in order, but the more they go on, the more surreal and campy and cheesy they become. And now there are fans who love that. That's what they think of. What they think of Freddy, they think of, and that's what they think of. Okay, that's great. But that's not the Freddy that I like and that I want. And Elm Street 3 is, some people have said, and I think I've even said it too, is a hybrid. And when of both, when I watch it, and I know you just watched it recently, and I watched it within the last year. When I watched it again, I thought, a hybrid, sort of. It is sort of. Like, I would say it leans more into the campy fun than it is at all ever scary. So I don't know if it's quite a hybrid of the first 2 movies and the last 3 movies. It's more kind of, it's eerie.
It looks like it's a 1980s horror film.
Well, they all do, but in my opinion. But I just mean that it's got a campiness to it that and to see Freddy so clearly and all this, I'm just like it works. It's not like the makeup is great, the sets are great, the effects are great, for their time, and it's
the stop motion animation they do is phenomenal.
It's great, and it's still fun, and I agree, it's a fun movie to watch, 100%. But it's not scary particularly. No. And I think that's me. I'm a curmudgeon. I'm anal, okay, when it comes to this kind of stuff. I admit it. But that's me. But I don't dislike the movie. It's kind of like going into a fun house when you watch Elm Street 3. Yeah.
It literally, that's what it's like. Yeah.
It's fun. But when I have I am the Wizard Master.
A trippy kind of fun house.
Yeah, exactly. But the effects are great. They're great at the end there and everything. And it's some cool stuff. And it's connected canonically to the original. They don't even mention 2. I get it. But yeah, I do like the movie. It's just, I wish it was darker. I wish every Freddy movie was darker. I just do. It's a nightmare on Elm Street, and they became, and I understand why. I mean, what else do you do with this guy, right? They became more campy, that they became more, like every set was like a Salvador Dali painting, and more surreal, which is cool, but I don't know. Yeah. I think we lost the bite that Freddy had. The bite that Freddy had from those first 2 movies, I think, was lost. And then he just became a carnival barker, and there's some great stuff. There's even great shit in 4. I just recently watched 4 in the last year. There's a great dream sequence when Alice is like in the movie theater and she floats into the movie screen and that's a fucking great, that's awesome shit. There's some actually, 4 actually has grown on me a little bit. 4 has grown on me a lot. There's some really good shit in 4. But again, Freddy is your carnival barker. It's not particularly scary. It's just surreal and eerie and weird. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I just like dark, scary Freddy, But hey, you know what? Teach their own, I guess. But now when it comes to Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6, again, this is a movie that and maybe it's just how I and I don't, and it's a movie too I don't dislike. I understand why people really like it. People love Tom Matthews. He's their quintessential Tommy Jarvis and blah blah blah, and the Jason and what's his face, CJ Graham is a great Jason. I agree, and as I said, it's great. It's fun, right? There we go. Now Friday the 13th is a bit different because they're all camp and cheese, but when I think of Friday the 13th, when I think of Jason and Friday the 13th, I think of the first 4 movies. I don't really think of anything after that. In terms of like, if I was going to watch a Friday the 13th, if I was going to have a Friday the 13th mini marathon, I would watch the first 4 movies, maybe 5, and I might pop in 6, but it's sort of at the end of my sort of, enthusiasm for the franchise, but there's some cool shit in it. There's no doubt about that.
And I think that's exactly what it is. It's like I said, the identity of its film is very, 1980s, and they obviously ramped it up with the kills, and on paper, it is what a Friday the 13th movie should be on paper. Campground, camp counselors, kids for the first time, by the way, because this is the first time you don't see kids, at the camp, I should say, in the first 2. Well, the first film was at the camp, the second one's at the training center. And then the 3rd and 4th one are somewhere on the lake that don't even look like they're on the lake still, but hey, whatever. Right. Yeah, right. And so you got all the right elements, kids doing camp counselors, hooking up, and smoking weed and being dumb and stupid, and you got this man in a hockey mask going around killing everybody, which for all intents purpose, that's a Friday the 13th movie. That's what people wanted to see. And I
absolutely
think I forget the guy's name who directed it now. Tom, isn't his name Tom too?
Yeah, something like that,
or something like that, or some
McLaughlin, Tom McLaughlin,
or whatever.
Chat room will let us know. Chat room is like, I know.
I think between him and the studios, they probably all just say, hey, look, we missed the mark on 5, so let's really. And you notice too what they did. I mean, I don't know if anybody caught it. There's no nudity in part 6. Zero nudity.
Zero.
So you're coming off of, that's what I'm saying. You're coming off of 5, which was directed by a porn guy, and that's why there's so much boobs in 5.
Yeah, there's a lot of boobage in 5.
You go to 6, and there's no nudity. No. You see the girl in her bra when she's having sex with John Travolta's nephew there in the camper. I think that's about the extent of it.
Sandy, what you doing?
Right? So but basically, all in all, it's the formula of, if you want to make a Friday the 13th movie and you want the Jason fans to be happy, that is the formula. And I think that's why that movie lands so well with so many fans, because Jason has a great look. You've got a pretty decent cast. Jennifer Cook, who plays Megan's probably my one, next to Amy Steele. She's second to the final girls in the franchise. Amy obviously being number 1 for me, of course. But I liked Jennifer Cook, who played Megan in that movie. Now, she, even though she is the final girl, she didn't really have much interaction with Jason like Amy Steele did, or like your girl there, your favorite, part 3. Can't remember her name. Kristen. Oh.
Is she my favorite? Did I say she was my favorite? Maybe I did.
I thought you said she
Chrissy?
was your favorite.
Maybe I did say
thank
that.
you. There's a bit of a showdown between her and Jason, and even in part 4 as well too, between Tommy Jarvis' sister and Tommy Jarvis. There's a bit more where Megan, she had one interaction with him where Jason grabs her by the head. And that's it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but I'm not minimizing her as a final girl, because she was a great character. She was a strong character.
And it was solely focused really on Tommy.
On Tommy, yes. Yeah. For sure. But
it was a final guy movie, really.
Basically, yeah. In essence, yeah, it is. And over the top kills, even one-liners in this, not necessarily, you know what I mean? I mean, especially from the cops, hit the cherries, or you bang, you're dead.
What does he say? He said hit the cherries, right? For years I thought he said pop those cherries.
Oh, pop those cherries.
That should have been hey, if the director from Friday 5 had been directing the movie, it would have been
Yeah, for sure. Oh, absolutely. But and then you had the like there was one "Don't Leave Home Without It" or something. Oh no, because of the Visa card that shows up in the water. So you had like stuff like that. Also, you had the guy from Ghost in there too.
Yes, yeah, the villain from Ghost. He always plays like a bad guy.
Kind of, yeah. He's in the beginning of this, and he gets it pretty quick. So there's some insert kills that I think weren't necessary in part 6, like the couple that's drinking wine and he proposed to her and they're about to have sex, and Jason impales them, together. I thought that was just like I felt like that was a scene that didn't need to be added. That it takes away from the film. It's just the pacing of the movie and where the movie was going and everything that was happening. I'm like, okay, you're giving us this insert where he kills the graveyard guy and he kills these other 2 people, and it's like I get it. I understand why, because they were going for the high body count. They want that, and back in the 80s, everything was just done over the top. So
yeah, I
totally understand that. But I also get why this is this at the time too, especially why fans just loved it. It's just, and why teenage kids loved this movie. Jason's look, good cast, the one-liners, set at a camp, here in Georgia, not too far from where I live, which is always cool to go up there and see. Very cool. Because it pretty much looks the same. Other than they've painted the cabins different and maybe done some updated windows. But it's cool to go there to see that it hasn't been modernized. It's not modernized with technology or anything like that. It's freaking the silverware for the campers and stuff still looks like it's from the 1980s. It looks like the school plastic stuff that we had as kids, or the plates and cups. Looks like the shit we had as kids in the 80s going to school. So
and shout out to Cindy Kania, I think. My apologies, Cindy, if I'm getting your last name wrong, but she of course played Annette in Friday the 13th Part 6. She got killed on the motorbike, or I think it was the motorbike, right? That's where they tried to escape when Jason came and stabbed them both through the
couple in the woods. That's right. Talking about. Yeah. That's right. So shout out to Cindy. I think her last name is Kania, I think. My apologies, Cindy. But of course, I just finished working with her on Dylan's New Nightmare. So, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. She was.
Yeah, I'm not taking away from her scene. It just when you watch the movie,
no, not at all.
It takes you away from the pacing of the film.
Well, it was a scene that was added in. It was a scene that was extra. I believe it was anyway. But she's a sweetheart. She's great. She was a lot of fun to work with, and has a great death scene in Friday the 13th Part 6.
Very cool.
So, so I agree with everything you've said, and I like this movie, but it's not for what, and I think it just could be because of nostalgia. I don't feel as nostalgic about Friday the 13th Part 6 as a lot of people do. I am far more nostalgic about Part 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I think Part 6 also is missing the Manfredini. Manfredini, is that how you say his last name? Harry Manfredini.
Oh, the score. Yeah, I think you don't really get and you don't get much of that in 3 and 4 either. Very little.
Well, 3 and 4, I think you yeah. Do you mean
do, but not heavily present like you are in 1 and 2.
No, that's fair enough. But 6, it's non-existent.
No,
and so it doesn't even. So I think that too. Like I'm very used to those earlier films where you hear that bum 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 bum. You know what I mean? Like there's a real sound and a score. It's like taking the the Elm Street theme, or however it goes, out of the Elm Street movies, which of course they eventually did too. But there's a real sort of sound and feel that I don't feel when I'm watching Friday the 13th Part 6. It does feel like an MTV Friday the 13th, right? And it's fun, and that's fine, and it's different. I think it's okay for Friday the 13th movies. I think you can get away with Friday the 13th movies being fun, to a degree because they're a bit different. There's always been some camp and cheese in regards to Friday the 13th movies. It's not like a Nightmare on Elm Street where the entire premise is built around a guy who murders you in your dreams, and if you die in your dreams, you die for real. That was a fun movie. I mean, I just don't think there should be anything fun about that. But I also understand that how long can you continue that premise over multiple films and keep it scary? Like, I understand even just the sheer nature of a Freddy Krueger who speaks, you know, you are influenced and pressured by the temptation to write lines that where he quips and all that. I get it. I totally get it. But with Friday 6, yeah, I guess there's just a vibe and a feel to it that it feels a little disconnected from the first 4 films to me, even though it goes back to the roots in terms of, Friday 5 actually feels more like a Friday the 13th movie to me than Friday 6 does. And ironically, Jason's not in it. Right. But Friday 5 still kind of feels like it's connected to the first four films. And so, like when the guys are out in the woods playing paintball and you have the, the music that's kind of, it's kind of like the cops in Halloween 5, right? And it's like, okay, I guess we're here. And I understand that you're the 6th movie. What can you do? Right. But I think as a kid, for whatever reason, it never resonated with me on the same levels as the first 4 movies did. So because of that, it never was one that I continued to watch on a regular basis. But I recognize that it is a fan favorite. I'm in the minority. I'm in the minority with Halloween H2O as well. I mean, it's not a favorite of mine, So I get that there are certain fan favorites that I understand why they're fan favorites, and I can intellectualize it and totally get it. I just don't feel the same nostalgic, emotional connection to them on the same levels as a lot of fans do. But I will say that Friday the 13th Part 6 has one of the best shots of Jason ever, which of course is when he's standing on top of the RV or the motorhome when it's turned over and there's some fire and he's standing up there and he's looking down and there's smoke. That's a great shot. That's a great shot from that film for sure. I think you said you liked that shot too, right?
Oh yeah. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Would have loved to have recreated that. That would have been a lot of fun, but would have been a bit of a hazard. Fire,
I remember you saying, "Oh, Chester Franklin Jr. says Manfredini did the score for Part 6. Oh, he did. Oh, okay. Well, it sounds, I'll have to go back and watch the movie. Chester coming in. I know this, damn it. I just don't recall the score in Part 6 sounding anything like the score from the first 4 movies. But it could also be because Manfredini wanted to change it up. I have no idea. Or maybe there's different elements of it in there. There's certain elements, but also because of the style and the type of movie that Friday the 13th Part 6 was, it didn't lend itself to have the it was more fun, so therefore he went more fun. I didn't know that. Thank you for that, Chester. But yeah, I don't feel it. It doesn't feel like the first 4 films to me, but it's a fun movie. No, and I mean, Alice Cooper's The Man Behind the Mask is fantastic. I like Alice Cooper's The Man Behind the Mask better than Dream Warriors. Yeah, I do. Not that I don't like Dream Warriors. Love it. But Man Behind the Mask, man, I had that on my MP3 player when I'd go jogging. I'd have that. It's fucking great. It's a great track. So what is your favorite? Let's get into these kills. What's your favorite kills in Elm Street 3? Elm Street 3, your favorite kills.
Painful because there's like I said earlier, the kills just become so campy that you're just like the marionette kid where he's, Freddy's got him as a marionette and cuts him and he falls off.
That's it right there.
It's cool. It's very creative.
Yeah.
Because anything after that, it just like the wizard kid, that was Taryn's death. I don't even know if that would get, I don't even know if people would they would allow that today because, you know, it's obviously drug overdose, you know, and he's injecting her and all that stuff like that. Welcome to Primetime, bitch. Obviously, the line is iconic, but it's just a girl getting picked up and her head's going into the television. Creative, but, you know, so I probably would go with the marionette kid.
I think
my favorite.
I think I'm going to have to go with the same, because again, it's not just the kill, like the actual kill itself. Okay, he's standing up there. Freddy's the puppet master. Love the symbolism of it. He cuts the, you know, the wires and he falls to his death. That's great. But it's that one image that always stands out to me, or I guess it's a couple of shots you see it in, is people seeing, what was his name again? The kid's name? Fuck, I can't remember the kid's name.
I don't know, and I just watched it too. I can't remember. Chat room will let us know.
Chat room will let us know. Joey's the guy that can't hear, but I forget the other guy. Talk?
He can hear, but he can't talk.
Oh, yeah. That's sorry. Thank you. Talk. Yeah, that's right. He can't hear, he can't talk, he can't see. He's fucked.
See no evil, hear no evil.
He is fucked. No, but there's a couple of shots when he's walking down the hall, and of course, in reality, the nurses and everybody see him just doing this. You know, he's just doing this as he's walking.
Right.
And then, of course, when it cuts to sort of what it's like in the dream, and you hear that, you know, that sound, you know, as he's walking along, you know, and you just see like the veins coming out of his you know, his ankles, you know, the tops of his feet and out of his wrists. He's walking along like this and shit. And it's creepy shit to see it, almost like, I don't know if this was just the fact that the effects are dated, but or if this is intentional, but the wires almost look like they almost look translucent,
transparent. Yeah. You can see through it.
Like you can see through it. And it's like it's coming into our reality, but then it goes into the dream world. Now that could also be that the effects are dated and whatever effects they were using, and it just, you know, it just happens the way it looks.
Is what it is, right?
Is what it is. But if not, and even if it is, it works because it just looks, and he's going like, it's fucking creepy. So, and that's before he even dies. So again, like Tina's death in Elm Street 1, yes, the actual death is crazy, but it's everything that leads up to that. It's the waking up, you know, and hearing the rocks being tossed. Rod, you awake? And then Tina, you know, and who is that? You know, and she walks out and Tina. You know, and he's walking with the marionette arms and shit, and you know, the big arms. She's like, this is. I mean, it's everything, right? It's everything that encompasses that. Then you get to the bedroom and the fucking thing on the wall and the whole thing, and that's great. But without that, it's that lead up, it's that build, right? And it's the same thing, not quite the same thing, obviously. You know, I'm not comparing. It's nowhere near the same impact as Tina's death, but you have a little bit of this leeway in before he actually dies, and then of course, you know, everybody's like, oh my god, is it Philip? That's his name, Philip.
Okay.
Thank you, Sweet Tea, Philip. So like, everybody's like, oh my God, Philip, what's going on? You know, they go, find somebody down there. And he's, you know, banging on and Joey is running down the halls, banging on the fucking doors, trying to get everybody up. I think it's that kill, you know, and it's like, what's going to happen? And Freddy's face just comes out of the darkness. You know, no, I'm kidding. He doesn't do that, but he just, you know, cuts it and, you know, falls to his death. So I agree with you. I think it's, in terms of death, I think it's iconic. I think it's just a great idea. If I was in the writer's room and we were tossing around ideas and somebody said, hey, how about this? You know, and they just explain, I'd be like, dude, that visual would be great. I'm walking down the halls, there's veins and tendons and shit. Like, fuck, let's fucking see if we can do that. That'd be awesome. I think the television gets the most love because it has Freddy apart, like you actually get Freddy talking, you know, and it's the iconic one-liner, you know, hey, Jennifer, it's your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch. You know, and it's just, it's an iconic line. Yep. You know, if you did a poll or a ranking, people might say that it's the number one Freddy line. It's one of his most memorable.
Line, yes, not kills, but definitely line.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to prime time, bitch.
Well, that's what I mean.
That, and this is God.
Oh, this is God is my, that's my favorite. But yeah, I think that's a, you know, I think that's why. So I'm right there with you in terms of kills. Now, when it comes to Friday the 13th part 6.
Now there's a lot I can work with here.
Well, let's just put it this way. There were 8 kills, a couple of them off-screen suicides.
Right.
8 kills in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. According to official Friday the 13th sources, there were 18 kills in Friday the 13th Part 6.
Count.
Well,
there's
Jason
a
overall.
lot of material to work with here.
I think Jason and Michael are leaps and bounds ahead of Freddy in terms of kill count. Yeah.
Man, one of my favorites, the triple decapitation, with the machete, with the guys playing paintball in the woods.
Yeah.
That's awesome. The cop getting cut basically, I don't know. He puts him in half, right? Or
that's my favorite. I think that's my favorite. He like bends him in half like he's folding up like a table or like a army cot.
Yeah. Now, what probably would be my favorite, hands down, unfortunately, we don't see it, is Paula's death, because you do see the aftermath of the room.
Yes.
And what that girl must have gone through, and what Jason, because there's just blood everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that probably would be. I'd love to know why. I mean, maybe MPAA. I'm wondering maybe if they did film it. Maybe there's a cut out there that we don't know. Be really kind of cool if they did have that cut, and we actually maybe do get to see how violent it was. Because when you do look at the scene in the aftermath, you can clearly tell it was a very violent kill.
Yes.
And it's just, we didn't, it's an off-screen kill, so unfortunately we don't actually get to see it, but that probably easily would have been the first choice. The couple on the getting impaled, it's all right. Doesn't he take the guy from Ghost and like flip him or some shit?
Something like that.
Jeez, I just watched this movie too, just to have this all in my memory. Because I think he doesn't. Yeah, he impales the window, but he takes it out, and then he gets out of the car with the gun, and I think he flips. Yeah, he does flip him. That's right.
Right.
Him.
Yeah.
The couple in the RV. I mean, her head going through the RV, or you see it coming out of the RV. That was all right.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah. The like through the wall.
Travolta's kid getting it in the head there with the knife. That's it's not really anything, but yeah, probably the cop, like we said, the triple decapitation.
Pop those cherries. Turn them on.
Yeah, that one was really cool. I'm trying to think of any of the other counselors' death. Paula's. Really, that's the one I wish we got out of all of them.
I was kind of hoping that he was going to go after the kid. Nancy.
It would have been interesting.
Walks into the fucking thing. All the children are dead. My God.
1980s America. That would not have fly.
America.
That, especially during that era, that was the Ronald Reagan era of this country. That would definitely not have flown well in this country. But yeah. I think those two, I kind of like the triple decapitation because
it's a good one.
It's a good one. It went well. You watch the behind the scenes. I think they got it in like one shot. I think it was because it was rigged for as a one, or you weren't going to get many. And obviously you could kind of see how careful the guy who was playing Jason. I don't know which one it was, because I know there's like 2 or 3 of them in this movie. You can obviously see the difference in the physique of the different Jasons.
Jason starts off, like he's had a few too many donuts, and then all of a sudden he's fucking jacked.
Yeah, he's doing some push-ups.
Doesn't take long for Jason. I think he just found. It's like a video game. He found something and he just jacked up.
Let's just say there's certain shots of Jason in this film where you can tell he squats. He works on those glutes. Yeah. That's CJ Graham. He's big. I think he's like 6'4" or something like that. He's a big dude. He's a big guy. But which is good, because Jason, whether you were rich, I know that Steve Dash obviously was not 6'4", and neither was Gillette, but I don't think anyway. But in terms of
Richard Brooker and Ted White, I don't know if they were 6'4", but they were definitely well over 6 feet, both of them.
Sure.
So they had a stature to them.
Well, especially when you're coming off of Dash and Gillette, who are only like a couple inches tall, and me. And I actually think I'm heavier now than Steve Dash was, from sources at the time.
Right. When
Dash was playing Jason, he's supposed to be like 5'11", 185 pounds. I'm 192 pounds. So
yeah.
You know, he's not a big guy, you know, in the sense of like when you're comparing him to the two that came after, you know, in 3 and 4 and the guys who played him in 6.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's fun to talk about these two because, again, in case you're just joining us, both these movies are fan favorites. I mean, listen, you can point to other movies being fan favorites. Friday 4 is a fan favorite. You know, Elm Street, certainly the first one you could look at. But when we say fan favorites, we look at that it's a film that is sometimes. I think
you also got to look at the timing of both movies. The release. Well, you know what I mean? Of when and people don't know, who didn't grow up like when we were kids, Freddy and Jason, like, they were huge. Like, and that's huge. Not an understatement.
No, huge.
Like,
huge,
they
huge.
were the shit in the
huge.
Like, Michael, non-existent. Michael was like an after fucking thought.
Nobody
no one cared.
No, it's true.
If we were doing YouTube videos in the 80s, it'd be Freddy and Jason.
Oh, for sure. Long. There's a reason why there's a movie called Freddy and Jason.
Exactly. Exactly. Good point.
But no, you're right. Look, I mean, I've said this, I don't know how many times, but it bears repeating. Freddy and Jason ruled the 1980s. Halloween is my favorite horror movie of all time. Michael Myers is my favorite horror character of all time, but he was nowhere to be found in the 80s. Now, that's not because he wasn't making movies. It wasn't because people just didn't like Michael. It was because there were no movies being made, right? So you have 1981's Halloween 2, and then you didn't get another one until 1988.
Yep.
That's 7 years later.
And at the time when it came out in 88, I love 4. It's my favorite sequel in the franchise. But horror and the slasher was starting to do this.
The slasher, yes.
It was starting to go down, not down as far as like, it's just the interest. Like, you know,
100%.
The peak of it, the popularity of it was starting to fade.
The peak of the slasher subgenre was between 78, because that's when Halloween came out. But really, it was really, I'd say like 80 to like 85. You know, that's really where the peak was. And Elm Street
3 and Jason Lives kind of came in right at the end of it, and
the end,
but enough to where it was popular. You know what I mean?
People for sure, because it was based on established material, and so when you hit 85, about 85, some sources, some people might say 84. I like to put 85 in there. When you hit 85,
85
that's when the turn happens. So that's when you turn. So now, when you get to 86, 87, 88, you're still relevant, but you're not as relevant as you were here. You know, you're not on the up, you're on the down, right? And
you're beginning that descent to like
100%.
All right, we've been here, we're good.
That's it. And by the time you get to 1990, you flattened out. You know, and then it starts to go up again thanks to Scream in 1996. But but you are correct. There were no Halloween films between 81 and 88, and there's 7 years there where Michael wasn't doing anything. And not only that, you had Halloween 3 in 82, and then there were no Halloween movies until 1988. So even if like Halloween was just not in the pop culture consciousness zeitgeist like Freddy and Jason were. Had Michael been making movies, and he would have been there too. But no, it was Freddy and Jason. They ruled. They ruled the 80s. They became bigger than they were huge. I mean, you know, Jason was a guest on Arsenio Hall. You know, I mean, you know, Freddy had his own television series.
He was all over
MTV, video games.
He was showing up in music videos like the Will Smith video, right? Nightmare on My Street.
Nightmare on My Street. That's right.
I think the Fat Boys did something too. The rap group. I think the rap group did something with Freddie. Like he was just everywhere.
But he was the comical carnival barker Freddy everywhere. He was,
Right.
but yeah, he was everywhere. And so they are Freddy and Jason, cross
Dude,
that threshold into the pop culture zeitgeist.
When you got Ronald Reagan quoting A Nightmare on Elm Street in one of his speeches, that's how huge these characters were.
Yeah, they were huge. And then Michael came along, of course. I mean, Michael was already established. I mean, it's not that people didn't know who he was, but that's why, when people often, I've often said that, you just can't compare them. Look, I love Michael Myers, but he got his ass kicked. And that's just because he wasn't around. I mean, it's not that he, and so to be fair, they weren't making movies, so he just wasn't there. Had he been making movies, had there been Michael Myers movies, would he have been on the same level as Freddy and Jason? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. I guess it's possible. But Freddy and Jason definitely ruled the 80s. And yeah, it was a very, very different time. So about posters, which poster do you like the best?
Jason Lives.
Do you?
There's just something about that hockey mask, the light shining through it. I saw it everywhere. I mean, that's the thing. I saw it on friends' walls, more so than I did see the Dream Warriors poster. But the Dream Warriors poster is really cool because it's Freddy. I think you got the glove and they're walking, right?
Yep.
On the gloves and stuff like that. There was definitely there was a stylized look, certainly, for Freddy's posters and VHS covers.
Very surreal.
Surreal, right? Exactly.
Dreamlike, which is good.
Right. And I love the Dream Warriors poster. It's a cool shot. It's a creative shot for sure. But I do like the simplicity of the Jason Lives poster. It's one that I've always, leaned towards a little bit. So
I think I'm going to go with Dream Warriors poster, I think. Yeah. But I do remember the Jason Lives poster a lot.
Yeah.
But I think I'll just go with Dream Warriors just because it's got that surrealism to it.
Sure.
But yeah. And then of course, when looking at box office, I went over to Box Office Mojo and took a look at, so I'll read these numbers off to you here. So this comes to us from Box Office Mojo. The budget of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors I don't think this is adjusted for inflation. I think this is $1987.
Probably.
So the budget was $4,500,000, so $4.5 million. The opening weekend, I wish it could tell me how many screens it was released on. It does for Friday 6, but for some reason I can't find that information here on Elm Street 3. Nonetheless, opening weekend, it made now remember that this is good for, back then. Made $8,880,000, $4.5 million budget. Went on to gross domestically. I don't believe, according to Box Office Mojo anyway, it was not released theatrically worldwide. So it was only released domestically. And again, when you hear the word domestic, that includes the US and Canada. We here in Canada are included in domestic. So it made $44,793,222 off a $4.5 million budget. Big success. Dream Warriors. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, the Dream Warriors. When we go over to Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. It was a $3 million budget. The screens it was released on, that information is available. It was released on, excuse me. No, it was Jason Lives that I couldn't find the screens for some strange reason. I don't know why. But I do have the screens for Elm Street 3, which is 1,343 theaters. Which was a wide release at that time. And so Jason Lives, $3 million budget. Opening weekend, $6,750,837. Total gross domestic. Again, it was not released worldwide. Excuse me. It says it does have an international, but the international is only like $400. So I don't know if that was like I don't know. But nonetheless, total is $19,472,000. So again, off a $3 million budget, $19 million at that time, yeah. successful.
Not bad.
Not bad. Successful.
Wasn't doing quite Elm Street numbers, but because in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Elm Street 4 is the highest grossing Elm Street movie out of all of them in the original box office run.
It might be. You have to we'd have to figure that out. Now, you have to remember that Jason Lives was I think it was one of the lower box office totals in comparison to everything that came before, if I'm not mistaken. But also, you have to think about, again, I don't know if anybody is, but if somebody's like, oh, why is it much lower than Elm Street 3? Well, you have to remember Jason 6, Part 6. Elm Street 3. Right. And you're coming off of a 5 that had no Jason in it. Right. So I think by this time, fans were like, oh, Jason.
I think we're 6.
Fuck.
Where its popularity honestly came in was through video rental for kids like us, renting it off the shelves, and people who might not have seen it in theater. Yeah. I think that's where that movie began to build its momentum. Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's probably true. And Elm Street 3, of course, Freddy was still fresh. I mean, let's not forget that it's important to remember that Freddy Krueger slipped in at the buzzer in terms of the horror, the golden age of the slasher subgenre. When Freddy came to be was in 1984. There had already been, 3, and even that year, the final chapter was released. So when Freddy came in, there were already 4 Jason movies to 1 Elm Street movie. So, Michael had 2.
Michael had 2, right? And he was done, right? As far as we knew. And Halloween 3 came out in 82, which tanked because it didn't have Michael in it. So as far as we knew, the Halloween franchise was done and over. Right.
Freddy was this new character.
Freddy was this new character that came in at the buzzer, because by the time you get to 85, again, we're doing that turn and we're starting downwards now. Now the horror slasher, subgenre of those those slasher movies from the early 80s are sort of becoming a thing of the past. And Freddy just came in at the buzzer to become relevant. If A Nightmare on Elm Street had come out in the late 80s, who knows where Freddy would be right now, but he came in at just the right time in 1984. And of course by Jason, people were like, Jason, this kind of thing. Freddy was still relatively, even though Elm Street 2 was not nearly as well received as the first one by fans and critics, Freddy was still new. He still had meat on the bone. There was still something there. The trailer for Dream Warriors was really good. It's like these lucid dreaming and these powers as Freddy's back and the man of your dreams. And so what is it? He was still fresh. He still had some fresh meat on the bone. Where it's Jason, it was like Jason's back. It's like, oh, for fuck's sakes.
Freddy hadn't, and for Freddy Part 3, he hadn't quite begun that run of showing up on MTV. I don't think the Elm Street series had come, or the Freddy's Nightmares series had come out yet. So you weren't overly saturated. I think it was a year. Sorry, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, I don't think he was overly saturated in everything yet, because you'd only had the first 2 movies. I think by the time Dream Warriors hit, that's when it really took off for the character.
I think you're probably right on that, especially in 88 after the Dream Master. And because I think Freddy's Nightmares was 88, if I'm not mistaken, 88, 89, somewhere in there.
I don't remember when Will Smith did that song, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Somewhere around 88, 89.
It's somewhere in that time frame too.
It is.
The Fat Boy song as well too. So Freddy really, that Dream Warriors movie, shot him to the moon. Yeah. Oh yeah. He was the last. He was sort of No, you're right. You're right with everything you've said. So it's interesting, it's interesting to think about these 2 movies and how, important they were in a lot of ways, because, although Jason Lives is one of, if not the least successful at the box office at that time, because it was better received than its predecessor. It kept the Friday the 13th franchise a little bit longer on life support, and it kept it around. And then of course you go into 7 and then 8 and then, we know what happens,
from there. But it was a little bit of extra juice into the Friday the 13th franchise at that time. It's like, oh, this is interesting, taking a bit of a different approach. It is fun. It is fun. So that's interesting. And then, of course, Elm Street 3 had something to prove, because although Elm Street 2 was a box office success, people were like, what happened? I don't know what's going on here. So they decided to go back to the rules and, the dream roots, and bring back Heather Langenkamp, and bring back John Saxon, right? And really kind of make it feel like a direct sequel to the original, which it does. You can watch Elm Street 1.
Let me ask you this.
Leapfrog over 2 and watch 3.
Because it is fresh in my mind and I just watched it. Do you feel, because I do, that there was a lot of missteps with Nancy in part 3? One, the first time Nancy and Freddie see each other. Love the dream sequence of the worm. Didn't think that should have been the first time where Nancy and Freddie see. I thought that should have been thought out a little bit more. And I actually thought the character of hers was very underutilized. I thought we could have used... I felt like, and I understand why, passing of the torch to Patricia Arquette's character and whatnot, and they really were putting a lot of emphasis on that character, and that was going to be, and obviously it didn't work out the way they planned, because she doesn't even come back for 4. And if you were, and the thing is if you were even planning for this to be a passing of the torch from Nancy to Kristen, why are you knocking the character off at the beginning of 4? You know what I mean? So that's why I felt like, if this is Nancy's swan song and we're done, and I don't mind killing the character off, but I felt like she was underutilized a lot. And I felt like they could have really utilized her character more, maybe even focused a bit more on her instead of the other characters. Unless if they were going with Kristen to be the new face of the franchise, then I would have expected at least 2 movies with her, and you didn't even the character anyways. Now, I don't know if 4 was going to be completely different if Patricia Arquette decided to come back. I don't know what the game plan was on that. I've never heard it. Have you ever heard anything different regarding 4?
No.
No.
She didn't come back because she didn't want to do. I don't think she wanted to do another horror movie. I think she wanted to move on.
So there you go. So, and I think, look, I get it, but I don't know if were they thinking something different initially with her character, and maybe letting her go on a little bit of a run here. But yeah, when I watched it, I was just like, and Nancy's death, just very like, okay, it's the father fake out, and then he stabs her in the stomach, and it's just kind of, oh, I'm going to send you off to a happy place. Kristen saying that to Nancy, and you're going to dream sweet dreams. But like, it would have been something a little bit more epic. You know what I mean? Like a really good showdown between Nancy, because like when you look at the first film, it's why I've argued and said she is the perfect written final girl in a horror film. Sorry, Halloween fans. Laurie Strode ran away from Michael throughout the whole fucking movie in the first film. She didn't fight him. She ran and hid. Nancy stood up to Freddy. She fought Freddy. You got this total showdown between the two characters by the end of the movie. And she faces her fear. And I just like, why couldn't we get something like that in the third film? We didn't get anything like that. Yeah. So my thought, especially if you're going to kill the character. Right. So I think the reason why you feel that way is, you said it. I mean, you said it outright, is where the focus is. And so, Elm Street 3 is really an ensemble piece, and the focus is really on these, patients, the last of the Elm Street kids. And that's where the focus is. And then Nancy is there as this sort of psychologist assistant in training, doing a residency or something. I don't know. She's very young to be a psychologist, but she is what she is. And she's there as sort of that person that, is that bridge between the confusion of these kids and to be able to tell them what's going on and make that connection and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But I think because, to your point, because Nancy in that first movie was such a strong final girl, to then use her as sort of a co-star, a complementary piece in Elm Street 3, because I've always felt that way too. It doesn't ruin the movie or anything, but I've always felt that way. I really like Heather Langenkamp as Nancy. I mean, again, I know you don't like Laurie Strode, but just saying she is the Laurie Strode of the franchise.
Of the franchise. So it would have been not. Now, how do you build an Elm Street 3 around just her and Freddy again? Don't know. You absolutely could do it. I don't know off the top of my head. But you absolutely could do it. They could have done that. There were a lot of scripts, obviously, that came in. Even Frank Darabont, who, of course, wrote and directed The Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption, obviously based on the short stories by, or the I don't know if The Green Mile was a short story. That doesn't feel like that'd be a short story. But The Shawshank Redemption, of course, was a short story, I believe. And he had a hand in very early on in the development of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Even Wes Craven, was involved to a certain degree. And so there was a lot of stories that were sort of floating around and ideas of where they wanted to take it. But I agree with you. She's such a strong final girl, and she's very likable, and we want to go right back to that. That she does feel complimentary. She's there and she's in it, and she does have an arc. And she sacrifices herself to save her the kids, and Freddy ends up getting. But it does feel, it feels
cheap. It's very cheap.
Yeah, it feels that's too bad.
Whereas I'm looking forward to seeing what you do, which is why I think this is probably my second favorite, although it's not, it's not canon to the Elm Street movies, but it's a part of it in a meta way, is A New Nightmare, because I like how she's Heather, but when you're watching New Nightmare, you feel like you're watching Nancy, even though she's playing herself. You also get that sense of Nancy in this film.
That's right.
And Wes did a phenomenal job with that in New Nightmares. Why I love that movie. It's great. And I can't wait to see what you guys did as far as the follow-up with Dylan's New Nightmare. And so when I watch that, I feel like that's Nancy. That's, she goes down into the dungeon because Dylan and fights Dylan, or fights Freddy again and whatnot. You have 100% Nancy Freddy showdown.
Right, because even though she's playing a fictionalized version of herself, Heather Langenkamp, and she's not Nancy, the focus of the story is heavily on her. She needs to play Nancy one last time, as Wes even says in that film. So I agree with you. I think I would have loved Elm Street 3 to have been about Nancy. It doesn't mean you don't have other people in the movie, of course you do, but focused on Nancy's character and the return of Freddy, who was coming back for his revenge. Now, I know you've called A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 Freddy's Revenge. I get that, so you couldn't call the movie that. But that doesn't mean that, narratively speaking, that isn't the motivations of the dream demon Freddy Krueger. He is coming after Nancy for his revenge on her. I agree with what you've said. I've always felt that I wish it was more focused. The story was more focused on her. And now how you spin that, what direction you go in, I don't know. Does that mean you have to rewrite the whole thing, lose, the Elm Street kids altogether? Maybe you can still include them. I don't know. But you are right with what you say, that the focus, understandably so, is on these kids. That's because that's and she's there. And then she dies, and it's like,
she dies, and it's a cheap death, so cheap. What this character went through in the original film to that, it's like, come on.
I know.
Now, here's a good question. Battle of the Blondes, Kristen or Megan from Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Friday 6. I think most people probably would lean more towards Kristen.
That should have been a poll. It put up the poll.
Should have been a poll. Although I will say, as far as like looks go, I lean more towards Jennifer Cook and Megan's character. She kind of looks a lot like my bride to be, but I got a feeling as far as performance, and because I almost said Jennifer Arquette.
Patricia
Arquette has a bit more. She has a stronger role in that movie. Whereas Megan, like you pointed out, and I never actually ever even thought of it that way, that Friday 6 really is a final boy movie. It's a final guy movie. Just as Elm Street 2 is a final guy. Yeah, movie. I never thought of it but you're right, because it's so focused on Tom Matthews' character.
Yeah.
What's the character
Tommy
name? Tommy, Jesus.
It's all right. It's called Nearly 44.
I know, shit. But I think if you would do the Battle of the Blondes from each movie, I think most would lean towards Patricia Arquette. And I get it. I get it.
All right. Well, should we jump over to the super chats here?
Yeah. And I actually do got to get going shortly.
Okay. If you got to skedaddle before
can
the
keep
show,
going.
I'll get them done. Yeah, I'll get them done. If you got to go, totally understandable. All right. So the first super chat comes in from Tim Line. Thanks, Tim. Sends in $5 and says, "Hi, Dave and Tony. Have you read the Dream Warriors novel? Darker story based on first draft of script." I have not. Have you?
I have not.
You're a big reader. That would be interesting to know.
I didn't even know it existed, to be honest with you.
Well, I'll have to check that out. Josh McKenna sends in $9.99 and says, this is one of two. Says, "Why do filmmakers get denied to film at certain locations? Did you and Bruce get pissed when you were rejected at the Black Christmas House?" And then he sends in $4.99. This is 202. And says, "Do either of you have a favorite Bruce Willis movie? Did you hear his health condition has worsened? It really sucks." So the first part of your question, why do filmmakers get denied at certain locations? Well, you can get denied for a variety of reasons. You know, if you're an indie filmmaker, it could be budgetary. You know, a location could be asking for too much that's just out of your production budget and out of your means. It could be a location that you can afford, but the owners of the location, whether it's a building, a home, a house, whatever, the city, whatever, just do not want you shooting there. They just don't want the inconvenience. It's going to cause problems, and they're going to have to block this off or whatever. There's a variety of reasons why filmmakers could get denied. Were we pissed that we were rejected by? No, not really. We were disappointed. We were more disappointed that we didn't have the opportunity to sell it. For those of you that don't know, the original Black Christmas House, which of course is here in Toronto, was going to make an appearance at the beginning of our movie, It's Me, Billy, Chapter 1. But we were denied. We had gone up to the house. It's in a very affluent neighborhood in Toronto with, gates and a buzzer.
Money.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Very, very Hollywood Hills type of situation.
A neighborhood that I'm never going to live in.
So, I rang the buzzer and I just heard yes. So I just said, "Oh, hi, yes. My name's Dave McRae. I just wonder if I can have an opportunity to speak with you about this." And all I heard was,
"Nope.
No, not interested." And that was it. So what do you do from there? Now, the house has changed owners over the years. And sometimes, it's like the Strode house and like the Myers house or the Elm Street house, right? There's certain houses you can go to, locations you can go to where people are very like, "Oh, hey, how's it?" And other people are like, "I don't give a fuck what this house used to be. Get the fuck." Now, who knows? Or who knows who knows who that was? Maybe it wasn't the owner. Maybe it was a caretaker. Maybe there's an elderly person inside who's sick and throwing up and they needed to get back to them. I don't know. All I'm saying is that people have been in the house. I know people who've been in the house. They've done documentaries from the house that are on the Screen Factory, Blu-rays from like 2003 and 5 and 6 or however that long ago that was. So now whether it's the same owners, I don't know. We were disappointed that we didn't have an opportunity to at least speak to the owners to be able to say, "Hey, here's what we're doing." Obviously, we would have paid, of course. That's why you raise a production budget. And if they had still said no, and been like, "Listen, guys, it sounds really cool, but no," then okay, fair enough. But to not even have the opportunity, we were like, "Oh, that kind of sucks." But we weren't mad because it was just kind of so fast. It was like, "Oh, okay, well, not much we can do," right? Not much we can do, but understandable. Who knows? I mean, we could have been the 5th person that day. Do you know what I mean? I mean, who knows? Who knows? And then Bruce Willis. Yeah. It sucks. It sucks, man. It sucks. He's a legend and, but he's human. And it's the reality of getting older sometimes. It's just, I am glad though that he's retired and that they took him out of that environment because he was making movies where he had earpieces in and he was phoning it in. Now he was phoning it in because of his condition, not because he didn't care. But his phone in, we just, we don't need to see that. He needs to, it's time. So it kind of sucks, but I'm glad. Matthew Farisi sends in $9.99, says, when Freddy returns, they should go for a blend between his Nightmare 1 and 3 personality. More serious and scary, but a touch of dark comedy. The overall tone of the film should be much darker, though. Yeah, I agree with you, Matthew. I just don't think... There's a lot of comedy in part 3 that I don't even like, that I would take out.
It's too much. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like 5 or 6.
Because one can argue, be like, well, he had one-liners in the original. Yeah. But look at when he says, this is God. Look at that whole scene. Look at the way it was lit, how dark and sinister it all looks. It may be a one-liner, but it's fucking freaky as fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree. Totally. Yeah. You're bang on, Tony. It's and again, I like 3. I do. But in rewatches over the years, I'm like, I don't know if this is quite as hybrid as people think it is, or even I've said it is, because I've said that too. There's definitely some darkness in 3, but I think it's more. It's not part 6 campy and fun and dumb. It's not that to that degree, but I think it does lean a little more into the humor than the darkness, I think. Matthew Farisi follows up with another $4.99 and says, if there is humor, it should play out sadistic and cruel, not goofy. I'm with you there. Maybe not a 50-50 blend between 1 and 3. That's probably too much humor. Oh, there you go. He was just talking about it.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah, we're on the same page. Aubrey James sends in $5, says, Jason Lives is iconic when Jason is on the van. Badass. You mean the RV? Yeah. The motorhome or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great shot.
That would be a cool poster. I wish I could get that in a poster.
I bet you could. I bet you could.
It'd probably be like a fan art poster, though,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it wouldn't. I don't think it'd be official, but it would be cool to...
that would be cool to have a shot like that.
Yeah. I remember when you said that you were thinking about actually
doing that.
Yes.
We got really close. We did. We had, because there's a place where there's an RV that's out in, of course, out in the woods.
Yes.
It would have, it wouldn't have been the same. It wouldn't have been on a road, and all that stuff like that. But we got close to doing it. It was, and it was tilted on its side. So I had everything there, but it was just, it didn't work out between me and the person who was going to play Jason. And just,
Yeah. I gotcha. And then Brandon Gregory sends in $1.99. Thank you, Brandon, and says, personally, I think Elm Street 3 is overrated. I
wouldn't say overrated.
Yeah, I wouldn't say overrated.
It's like Dave said it perfect. It's a fun movie. You're not going to get scared. It's just fun. That's it. It's fun. I mean, it's a fun house ride.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say it's overrated.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say it's overrated. I think it's appropriately rated. It's just not the rated that I want my Freddy to be. But it's also not Freddy's Dead either. I mean, if I had to choose between Elm Street 3 and Freddy's
5.
Dead, or 4 or 5, I mean, yeah, you know what I mean? I mean, it's like Freddy's Dead. Oh my God. It's just, no screaming while the bus is in motion. Oh my God. Oh my God.
You know what? It probably won't be next week. It probably won't be next week, folks, but you just actually gave me an idea as it popped in my head because I got to go here in a second.
Yes.
The next we should do the Battle of the Fours, Friday the 13th part 4 versus Halloween 4.
Oh,
the Battle of the Fours, baby.
Dude, maybe that should be it. Oh, right? Man.
Because they're both really good in their own right. Friday 4, everyone loves Friday 4.
A lot of people, and I agree with this, a lot of people think Friday 4 is like the perfect slasher movie.
Right. And now you're going to put it up against Halloween 4, which is a great sequel. And to me, it's the best sequel we've had since 1988. So,
and if we're going to talk Halloween on the channel, at least we can include something else to go with it.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. The Battle of the Fours.
The Battle of the Fours. I'm kind of digging that. Nighttime sends in $5 and says, do you think Disney puts themselves into a corner since every new superhero film they release has to break like $500 million just to break even? Well, they follow the patterns, right? And there was a time there where every Marvel movie was making, 1.5, 1.2, 1.3, over $1 billion. So it makes sense that if the customers are there and if the evidence is there statistically in terms of box office results, that would make sense to keep, making movies in the $200 to $250 million range. Is it good business practice in general? No, probably not. Because there are only certain movies that you can justify costing that much that are going to have that kind of return. And not every movie does. Look, look at Ant-Man and the Ant-Man Quantumania or whatever it is. I don't know how much it costs to make, but I imagine it's probably 150 to 200 million bucks, and it's not coming close to the 500. I don't think it is anyway. Do I think they back themselves into a corner? No, I don't, because I think they've made a lot of money making movies that cost $250 million to make, and most of them, if not like above 90% of them, have probably broken even. But there's that select few that don't. But when you look at the statistical history of the box office results of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because we're not talking about DC, that's not Disney, up and just until recently in terms of phase 4, there's been, it's not quite like, phase 1 through 3, fair enough, but you look at the 22 films they released moving up to Endgame, and they were all gigantic box office phenoms. I mean, the billions of dollars. So, maybe now they might kind of restructure it, but I don't think in general I would say no. But I get what you're saying. Do you have to go, or are you?
Yeah, I gotta split. So
okay, you got to split.
See everybody next week.
All right. Well, Tony's got a skedaddle. We'll hang around here for a few more minutes and answer these questions. And Tony will connect soon.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
All right, later. Later. And Tony is gone, so it is just you and me. It is one dude and some bullshit. Raymond M sends in $5. Thank you, Raymond. Says, did you see Chris Rock strikes back at Will Smith and Jada? He said some vile things at his new stand-up. Revenge has come. Okay. I think I am... Let's see here. 1 second. I think I am back. Of course, I've lost a lot of people. That's all right. Hang on. Yes. Okay. I am back. Baby. I am back. I'm not sure what happened there. I have no idea what happened. My apologies. I'm not sure what happened. I am back. Colin Murdy says I am back. For those of you that are just tuning in, Tony had to leave. He has to go and attend to the missus. So it'll just be us for a little bit while I finish off the super chat questions here. My apologies for that. Let's jump right back into the super chats so I don't miss a thing here. I'm not sure what happened. Something happened. I don't know what happened. The stream kind of cut out. But I was answering, the question I was answering was from Raymond, who had sent in $5 and said, did you see Chris Rock strikes back at Will Smith and Jada? He said some vile things at his new stand-up. Revenge has come. I did see it, not the whole thing. I didn't see the whole thing. I just saw the 2.5 minutes where he was talking about Will Smith. And yeah, there's a couple of things in there where he really ribbed him. But you know what? If I'm being totally honest, I think he could have gone further. I think he could have gone further. Now, I'm not saying he held back, but I think he could have gone even further. But what he did do was, it was fun. It was fun. It was fine. You know, it was a good rib. It was a good rib for sure. John Dez sends in $9.99, says, hey Dave, if you had to watch one movie, if you had to watch one on movie night, which one would it be? Jason Goes to Hell, Freddy's Dead, or Halloween 6 Producer's Cut? I would watch Halloween 6, the Producer's Cut. That's easy. That's easy. Jason Goes to Hell and Freddy's Dead are garbage. Halloween 6 I'm not a fan of. And Halloween 6 is garbage too. But it's a little less garbage than Freddy's Dead and Jason Goes to Hell. It's like having like a shit pizza. Do you want a shit pizza or do you want a pizza slice with some shit on it? Well, I don't want a shit pizza because that's a lot of shit. I'll take the pizza slice with some shit on it. It's still shit, but it's less shit, but it's still shit. So I guess it doesn't really matter. You're still eating shit, no matter which way you slice it. No, but out of those, yeah, I would take Halloween 6, the producer's cut, hands down for sure. I think, did I lose? Hopefully I didn't. No, I didn't lose the poll. Okay, great. Let's check in on the poll. You know what? I have to admit, it's a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. So the poll, so I put up a poll earlier that said, which do you prefer? What do you prefer? Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, or Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. And I have to, it's a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. 211 people voted. 54% say Friday the 13th Part 6. That doesn't surprise me that Jason Lives won. And 46% say Dream Warriors. It's only 8 percentage points off. I thought for sure that Jason Lives was going to steamroll this. I don't know why. I get the sense that there's more Friday the 13th fans that follow me. There's more Friday the 13th fans that are my viewers for whatever reason. I just get that sense. I get that sense. But Dream Warriors is hanging in. They're hanging in. I mean, 54% to 46%, 211 people is pretty good. It's pretty good. Okay, I don't think I've missed any super chats, right? I don't believe I have anyway. So yeah, if you're just joining us, if you're just joining me, Tony had to skedaddle early. He just left about, 10 minutes ago, if that. You can go back and watch, of course, the rest of the stream to get to know, know Tony's thoughts. But yeah, Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors for me, I think I'm probably going to lean more into Dream Warriors. If I had to pick one between Friday the 13th Part 6 and Elm Street 3, I think I'm going to lean more to Elm Street 3 to watch. So if I was voting on that poll, I probably would also vote for Elm Street 3 is what I think I would do. But but I mean, both movies have their place. And like Tony and I were saying earlier, it's a situation where both movies had something to prove. Friday, obviously, with they're just coming off of ooh baby, Friday 5, and then Elm Street 3 coming off of Elm Street 2, which was a box office success, but a critical and fan sort of, I don't want to say failure, but certainly not nearly the acclaim that the first one got. So both had to prove things for different reasons. And it's nice to see that. And I think both were successful in doing that. I think they were. Friday 7, I know is also a lot of people are really beginning to like Friday 7 as well. But between Elm Street 3 and Friday 6, I think I would lean more towards Elm Street 3. And it could also be because, again, we're not comparing the 6th installment of each franchise. We're comparing a franchise that was really getting tired. You're into Jason 6, like Jesus, and Freddy, you've only had 2 movies. So there's still that chance for that rebound. Do you know what I mean? And I think maybe if we were comparing Jason 6 and Freddy 6, Freddy's Dead, well, that's a different, I would take Jason Lives every day of the week and twice on Sunday. There's just no competition there in my eyes. But with Elm Street 3, I think, although I'm not a fan of the direction that they were taking the Freddy character, I do prefer, I think, Elm Street 3. Because of the reasons that I just stated. But it's fascinating to hear people's reasons and arguments for both movies, and it's really cool. It's very interesting. So yeah, 211 votes in that poll. And let's see. I don't think I've missed anything, right? Savannah Christina Heffron says, Dave, what was your favorite part of Dylan's New Nightmare makeup as Freddy? And what was your favorite part doing Freddy? And do you enjoy the fighting scene of you and the fighting sense of you and Dylan? I think you mean scene. Well, I cannot confirm nor deny if there's a fight scene at all, because that would be spoilery. So I will just say that, Dave, what is your favorite part of Dylan's Nightmare makeup? Just the makeup itself. Just how, having somebody like, Nora Hewitt do it, and she was just an absolute pleasure to work with and to be, I'm in the makeup chair for 3.5, 4 hours, every time. And she was just an absolute professional, great at her job. And I would sit in the makeup chair with her any day of the week, it was just an absolute pleasure. So I think just having it, I've never had that done before. I've been in makeup chairs in my life because I did start as an on-camera actor in the early 2000s doing commercials and, all that kind of stuff. So I am familiar to a makeup chair, but nothing like this. I certainly haven't had, prosthetic makeup applied to my face for 4 hours to become Freddy Krueger. So that in and of itself was an experience. And I think it was just that, just everything, the entire experience, was just really cool, I think. And then, favorite part, Freddy, and what was your favorite part doing Freddy? Again, just losing myself in the character. When you have that much makeup on and you have the hat on and you have the sweater and the glove and, you become Freddy Krueger. And I think what's interesting about it is that, what was so cool about the process, and I've mentioned this before, and I'm not throwing shade, and I sincerely mean this. I'm not throwing shade at the cosplayers or the people that own the silicone Freddy masks. I would give anything to own a silicone Freddy Nightmare on Elm Street 2 mask. That'd be amazing. They are amazing. They form to your face and in the right lighting and everything. It's amazing. But it's not prosthetic latex, foam latex makeup being applied to your face like Robert Englund in 1984. And there's a realism, there's a movement that you have in the makeup and in the eyes. Now the eyes are seen and everything that you don't quite get with the silicone masks. They are the next best thing, 100%. And I have no doubt they're only going to get better and better and better and better and better, for sure. But to be in the prosthetic makeup and to have that range and to look at myself, it's so real. And to just lose myself in that character with the outfit on and everything, is great, to be able to, I felt very comfortable. I didn't feel uncomfortable. I wasn't hot. I felt perfectly fine. And to hide away and to become Freddy, was just great. I shot a lot of, and there's a lot of behind the scenes shit too. They shot hours of BTS of Dylan's New Nightmare. So once Dylan's New Nightmare is released to the world, I have no doubt that you will see a mega BTS video at some point with a lot of Freddy Krueger and all that kind of stuff. And I have some stuff that I shot on my phone of me in the makeup, just, farting around. And I would love to be able to show you guys that, but I can't until the movie is released. But once the movie is released and it's out there, then I will definitely upload some of those videos and photos that I took of myself while I was on set. So I think, again, just that everything really, I think is what was so great about it. Warren Armour says, hello, Dave and Tony. Not doing too good, but good to see you. Well, I hope you're okay, Warren Armour. I hope everything's okay. Yes, Tony, for those of you that are dipping in and out, Tony was here. He just was, he had to leave early. He had things he had to do. So he had to leave early. All right. So I've answered all the super chats. I think I have. So the final tally for the poll, let's end this poll right now. And the final tally, the poll is... Which do you prefer? Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, or Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors? And 215 people voted. 53% of you said Jason Lives, and 46% of you said Dream Warriors. A lot closer than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be much further apart. I thought it was going to be like 80-20 or something like that. I'm kind of surprised. It's good to see that there. All right, folks, listen. That is going to do it for this episode of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit. Tony, like I said, had to take off and skedaddle. Thank you to our great moderators, Frank Riker, Tabitha Short, Darren Sands, Chris Baber, Cody Snyder, and Andrew Stevens for doing what you guys do. Thank you, of course, to the Super Chat questions that came in today, and for all of you for watching this episode of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit, episode 183. Tony and I will be back next Monday night at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you tune in for that. If you want to follow Tony on social media, right there, you see right there, at Tony Michael 579 on Facebook, at Tony Michael 579 on Facebook. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, all my links are in the description. Check them out until your heart's content. And when your heart is content, check them out again. Tony, any last things you want to say? Oh, he's not here. He's not here. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Talk to you all soon. Cheers.